Okay, let's talk about your home. For most of us, it's the single biggest investment we'll ever make, right? Now imagine that Parliament is having a serious discussion about a brand new tax, one that could completely rewrite the rules of owning that home. And I'm not talking about a small tweak here. This is a potential financial earthquake for homeowners all across the UK. And listen, if your property is valued anywhere near £1 million or, could be in the future, then you need to pay very, very close attention. A powerful coalition of think tanks and policymakers is taking aim at your biggest asset, and honestly, it's happening largely under the radar. Let's be really clear about this. This isn't just about tweaking council tax bans. No, we are talking about a complete overhaul. And that phrase comes directly from their proposals. It's a change that could leave homeowners with annual bills they simply never saw coming. So you have to wonder, what's changed? Why is an idea that was once basically political kryptonite suddenly on the table? To get that, we really need to zoom out and look at the big picture. The core argument, and this is championed by really influential groups like the Resolution Foundation, is simple. For decades, the taxman has hit the income you earn from work hard. Meanwhile, the wealth that's just sitting in property, it's got on a relatively easy ride. They argue this has created a massive imbalance, fueled inequality, and now they say it is time to rebalance the system. And this really illustrates just how absurd the current system is. Our council tax, the property tax we all pay, is literally frozen in time. It's based on what your house was worth way back in 1991. Just think about that for a second. A flat in London bought for £80,000 back then could be worth $1.5 million now, but its tax band has barely budged. This has created this bizarre, distorted system that even politicians are starting to admit is completely broken. So what's the proposed solution? Let's get into the specific plan that's being floated to replace this outdated system. It's called the proportional property tax. Okay, so here's the core idea. Forget all those confusing old council tax bans. This new system, the proportional property tax, is brutally simple. You would pay an annual tax based on a set percentage of what your home is worth right now. No more 1991 time warp. This is all about today's market value. And the rate that's being thrown around is 0.5%, 0.5% a year. I know, it doesn't sound like a lot, does it? But just wait until you see the actual numbers. The impact is, well, it's staggering. And here it is, the bottom line. Just look at this table. If your home is worth £1 million, your annual bill could jump from around 3,000 quid to 5,000. That's nearly a 70% increase. If it's worth $2 million, your bill more than triples to £10,000 a year. That is over £800 a month just in property tax. For a lot of people, that's not just a big increase, it's completely unaffordable. But, this isn't just about the numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about people. This policy has a very real human side, especially for a group of homeowners often described as being asset-rich but cash-poor. This quote right here gets to the absolute heart of the problem. We're not talking about oligarchs. We're talking about everyday people, often retirees on fixed pensions, who bought a modest home decades ago. They didn't speculate, they just happened to be in a neighborhood that gentrified around them, accidentally turning their nest egg into a huge tax liability. Just follow this story. Someone buys a family home, let's say 40 years ago. They raise their kids there, they pay off the mortgage, they plan their retirement. But then the neighborhood changes, and boom, their home's value on paper just skyrockets. Now they're living on a fixed pension, and they could be facing a new tax bill so large it might actually force them to sell the one place on earth they call home. And this personal dilemma, it feeds into a much larger national conversation. So let's broaden our view to the fierce debate this whole proposal has ignited, and let's look at both sides of the argument. So what's in it for the government? Well, the answer, as it always seems to be, is money. A lot of it. As you can see, a full-blown system could rake in an extra £20 billion a year. Even a more limited version, just targeting homes over $1 million, would bring in billions. Billions, they say, are desperately needed for things like the NHS. And this is where the debate gets really heated. On one side, you've got the people for it. They say it's all about fairness. Why should a salary be taxed more heavily than a £1 million property? They point to the billions it would raise for public services and argue it just brings the UK in line with other major economies. But the arguments against are powerful. They ask, how on earth do you accurately value 28 million homes every single year? They say it's a tax on aspiration, punishing people for making smart investments. And their knockout punch argument? This does absolutely nothing to fix the real problem, the fact that we just don't build enough houses. So, with all of this on the table, the debate moves from the theoretical to the very personal. What does this all mean for you as a homeowner, and what questions should you be asking yourself? This brings us to the slippery slope argument, and it is a big one. So the initial proposal targets £1 million homes, but once that system is built, what's to stop a future government from lowering that threshold to 800,000 or 600,000? All of a sudden, millions of ordinary family homes could be caught in the net. And if you look at tax history, that's exactly how these things tend to play out. And this right here is maybe the most important takeaway of all. The politics around this have fundamentally changed. With an entire generation struggling to get on the property ladder, the idea of taxing housing wealth, well, it's just not toxic anymore. What was once a fringe, academic idea is now being seriously debated by the people who actually make our laws. The ground beneath homeowners has shifted. Your home might feel like your security, the result of years of hard work, but it also might be about to become a target for policymakers. The fundamental rules that have governed property wealth for decades are now being questioned. So, the final question is a personal one. Are you prepared for what might be coming next?